This is the accordion or the concertina sketchbook that I am going to be creating my door series in. And I have to be truthful that even after having worked in, well over 100 sketchbooks, probably more than 200 sketchbooks in my life, I still have anxiety before I put the first touch of brush, pencil, or pen to the paper. This is going to be doors. So on this first page, I'm skipping this part because I know better than to start off on this page. Because if it's the first thing I open to and I don't like it, I'll be devastated. Now, the other thing is, do I open it this way? Well, see, it's the same thing, going that way. So it doesn't really matter which direction this is. This is a purchased concertina book. Most of the time I make my own sketchbooks, but I just couldn't resist this one. So I am going to begin with this. We have the sound of fish tank going in the background, and then Tila, who is a giant labradoodle, who's going to want my attention. But this is how it goes. If you're going to cram a daily practice of sketching into your life, you're going to have all kinds of distractions going on at the same time. At least most of us do. I also have to figure out how to set this up so that I can sketch looking at the door and have my little GoPro mini tripod doing the filming. The lighting's not great right here, but that's going to have to be okay. This is a really tall, skinny door. Under there. That should have been a little bit more over there, because this whole thing has many strips coming down. I'm just trying to describe everything I see, and I'm going to make corrections right on it, because I too end up wanting my sketchbook page to just look magnificent, and I'm not always okay in having all my, what even I refer to as mistakes, which I beg my students not to think of anything as a mistake, but I'm a human being too, so it's very natural to think of something that I did that isn't quite what I wanted, and where I feel like it was being a little bit incompetent in what I was doing, to be viewed as a mistake. There, I'm just moving that over because I want this to be able to go all the way down. And I still didn't make it over far enough. So I'll just make it over even further. And this goes up to there. And the ceiling is right there. And one of the dogs already is trying to get into the pantry. They are very sweet dogs. I'm just not used to having dogs grab my attention every 2 seconds. Good practice for me. All right. And there's black inside. Now these little hooks, I definitely want to include the hook. That's what keeps the dogs out of the pantry, so they don't eat my granola. I'm not trying to make this a super drawing of reality. What I'm doing is gathering information. Because it's at a bit of an angle, though it may not look like it in my drawing, it is. There's more on this side than that side. And then those are recessed panel. I think that they're called panel doors, and this is a panel. And then there are two more panels. There, and two more panels here. There should be more room down there. I'll just put this in a bit of a setting. It's very odd, I think, that this electrical outlet is on this funny little platform. It's one of the many interesting oddities about the house. It's really a fascinating house. And over here, I'm going to write some words that describe how I feel about this door, or the description of the door. Tall, skinny, layers of paint sanded off, and holes spackled, creating a beautiful surface and visual texture, far more inspiring than a freshly painted door. Two sets of hardware fastenings. That's one. And the other one okay, I think it's time now to color map it, so I'll move on to that. And the first two mixes, the first mix was too gray, the second mix was too blue, so now I'm adjusting from there. And even though it is kind of gray in some areas, I want it to be a beautiful gray. And this lighting is so bad for this that I really don't know what it will look like in the light of day. But it won't matter, because if I did a painting and it was going to be viewed in this room, the colors would have to work. I do have a little bit of sparkle in there because I'm using some of the mica paints. I'm using the Beam paint stones. So there's the color mapping of this. Let me see if I want anything. Oh, I really do need some really good darks for the area that's inside the pantry that's dark because the light's not on, and the very deep shadow that goes there. And this is a greenish. That shouldn't have been. So when you get something that you really don't want on there, you want to make sure that you change it quickly. Even if you can't make it perfect, to take it away from what it was is important. That's better. All right, that's my color map. All right, now what I'm gonna do is splash some color on here, not splash, but paint some color on here using my color map, but not necessarily trying to make this realistic. I just wanna start this whole series off with some reality, but then also some playful abstraction in there. Now I don't care that this is really light, though that might be good. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll go over it with some dry paint. Soaking up some of the big puddles that I don't want to remain big puddles. All right, I like it so far. This is totally dry now, and I'm going to add just a few lines more, I think. I don't want to do too much because then it's just going to get too tight. Let's see what happens. Taking up a little bit of the color here. There's so much texture going on that I don't want anything to be real solid. little tiny observations, like this little tiny bit of extra shadow up here. And so what I'm doing is not so much creating a painting of the door, but making notes of my observations. And when you think about it that way, you end up, or I end up, learning quite a bit more about whatever it is I'm looking at. And then this color, this blue that I've put up there, I realize I would really like down in here in a few places too, because that is definitely a color in the door. But I have to look at the door I've made, not just the door that I'm looking at, because the coloring is very different on the door that I've made. And then I also realized that I don't have any indication of panels in here, so I'm going to go back in with my pen and add the suggestion of the panels, but I'll let that dry again. For adding the ink lines, I'm going to use a dip pen dipped into walnut ink. See, this is a much finer line than that. Well, not a lot finer, but it is a finer line. And this is the walnut, so it won't be quite as harsh. It will be just a little bit different. Okay, that's the pantry door. Not very abstract at all. I thought it would be more abstract. I'll do something more abstract. I forgot to turn the camera on. So this is my more abstract version over here. There's some nice pink. I don't think it looks as pink on the video that I'm shooting. See, but I'm using this same palette. Okay, done. Sorry that I forgot to turn the camera on for the beginning of this. What I did was I drew it very loosely with the dip pen in the walnut ink. And I took the inside panels and just took some of the shapes from the door. And these are the little bits of spackle. And used the palette, brushed it on with this brush, which is a small mop brush, and then flicked a little bit of color on. And that's it. So here I have my more representational door and the abstraction of the door.